Good evening. Welcome everybody to our December Chippewa Valley Wahi Continuing Education meeting. Our speaker tonight is Jessee with Eau Claire Insulation. We'll be talking about insulation issues and how to remedy things that he sees and things that we might see. A couple of announcements. This weekend, Friday and Saturday, is the fall state seminar in the Dells. I don't know if anyone's going to that. It'll be a good lineup. It's always a good lineup, so that's always something. And then our Christmas party will be at Dragon Eddie's this year, if that's fine with everyone. We could have had it here again, but when I spoke to them, they want a minimum of 25 people. Because Friday nights and Saturday nights during the winter are their big nights, and especially with the holiday season, they could fill this room with a lot more people. So we could either have it here in the small room, or we could have it somewhere else. So the consensus last month was that the small room might get pretty tight for a Christmas party. So I checked around, and Dragon Eddie's was kind of the best option that was out there. So, and that will be the second Friday in January. I believe it's the 10th, but I'll send out an email. It'll be the Friday after our January chapter meeting. So, other than that, I guess I don't have any other announcements. I don't know if anyone else has anything I want to share. Okay, I guess on that note, Jessee, the floor is all yours. So, anytime you're ready. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, again, Jessee with Eau Claire Insulation and Exteriors. Been there about 19 years, almost to the day. So I've been in a lot of existing homes. Hopefully I can kind of enlighten you with a few things and maybe even learn a few things from you guys tonight. So put together just a few notes, kind of some basic insulation 101 stuff, and then just kind of a collection of pictures to kind of, stuff that you would see, stuff that we see, figure out how we can fix that stuff or manage those things, and kind of go from there. So if you have anything, I'm not too worried about staying on topic. So you've got a question way out in left field, throw it at me and we'll go that direction. So insulation is basically about concepts, just like anything else, right? Once you kind of pick up on a few basic concepts of insulation, do's and don'ts, you can solve 95% of your problems just using those basic concepts. In my opinion, like it says here, the most important things to remember when you're talking insulation is 1, air seal, 2, air seal, 3, air seal. Why is that so important? Most problems we run into are due to air leakage, or a combination of air leakage and another problem. It's especially true when we talk, energy efficiency, condensation in attics, frost in attics, ice damming, moisture on windows, moisture on ceilings, moisture on walls, that kind of stuff. When we're talking moisture, so probably one of the biggest problems you guys see, I would assume, when you're looking in existing homes is, moisture problems, right? I'm assuming. Attics, basements, that kind of stuff. Anytime we have air leakage from a conditioned space to an unconditioned space, the reason it's so important to stop that is because with the air leakage, it carries moisture. So that's the biggest thing, is we're losing air and, more importantly, the moisture into areas that we don't want it to go. Everybody's heard the kind of phrase, well, I want my house to breathe. In today's world, that probably couldn't be farther from the truth. We want to try to build a house as physically tight as possible and tell it when and where to breathe by using air exchangers, bath fans, range hoods, that kind of stuff. So the old phrase of "I want my house to breathe" is really no longer of use. The biggest one we talk about is basically stack effect. So when we're talking air leakage, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the phrase, but stack effect's basically like say an attic in the winter is pulling air from the house into the attic. And again, the moisture's going with it. The things we want to, I'll just show you a few pictures here on another slide. Yeah, so common things you're gonna see, hot spots like this. I mean, that's your first sign of I have air leakage. It's when we say heat loss, it's usually air leakage. It's not so much, it can be a lack of insulation, like there's no insulation in this area. But, I was in this attic the other day, there was, 8 inches insulation over that eave, but there was a wire hole that big. So it's not the lack of insulation that's causing a hot spot like that, it's gonna be a source of air leakage. So a wire hole, pipe penetration, light fixture, something like that is why you're gonna see hot spots more often than not. Yeah, again, so the air leakage thing, obviously that's why you're gonna get the mold in attics, mildew, condensation, dripping through can lights. I'm sure you guys have gotten calls, my can lights dripping, or this happens. It's usually because there's air leakage going around that. We see it especially a lot in, like a can light itself, they're very leaky, so when that warm moist air hits a cool can like that, if it's especially cold for a week or 2 in a row, that frost will just keep building. It'll never really dissipate. Like if you have a 30-degree day and then a 40-degree day, that frost never really has time to build. If you have a prolonged cold stretch, maybe a week or 2 of below zero, it's just gonna keep frosting and frosting, and then we got a day that's warm, and that's when that water starts to, or that frost will all turn into water at one time, it'll start dripping. Another big one with air leakage is like tongue and groove ceilings. We see that a lot. If there's not a continuous vapor barrier behind that, like a plastic, a lot of times we'll see just a craft face bat, or just unfaced bats. That's where you're gonna see a lot of dripping coming through wood ceilings like that. So anytime we see like a tongue and groove ceiling, we're gonna really check out something like that to make sure it is air sealed. So that's a big problem. Everybody's got the wood ceilings, but they forget to put the when we say vapor barrier, really what we're talking is air barrier. So if you can stop the air from leaking through the wood, you're gonna stop the moisture from going through as well. Also with air leakage, that's really where you get your energy efficiency. So 30 to 40% of your energy loss or energy usage is due to air leakage, whether it's through windows and doors, stack effect going into the attic, anywhere air can get out, that's where you're losing your energy. So the tighter we can build a house, the more efficient it's going to be for us. Let's see here. Yeah, so another common, just a kind of an insulation 101 thing is air always tries to even itself out or equal itself out. So it'll move from hot to cold. So your drive will be from hot to cold. So in Wisconsin, we're gonna have 6 months where you have drive from outside in, and probably 6 months you have drive from inside out. So say you have moisture in a wall cavity. In the winter, that moisture is gonna wanna be on the sheeting, driving from warm to cold. In the summer, if you pulled like sheetrock off your wall and you saw that plastic, your moisture is going to be against the plastic. So Wisconsin's got a pretty tricky climate for vapor barriers and moisture barriers because we have kind of equal amounts of drive but opposite directions half the year. So I'm surprised they still make us do vapor barriers, because a lot of times they cause more problems than they'll fix. But still in the code book, so we still abide by that. But you're always going to have moisture. It's just what side of the wall or what side of that assembly is it going to be on, due to temperature, moisture, that kind of stuff. Kind of the same thing as wet to dry. You know, basically, you got a wet board over here, or this half of the board is wet. It's going to want to keep seeping to the dry part of the board. So moisture is going to go from wet to dry. And then basically the other one is pressure. So basically you're talking wind. Obviously we don't have to deal with that too much, but I mean that's why we get wind. We got high pressure moving to low pressure. That one's not as prevalent in our profession, but just those are the three basics of how moisture and temperature move. So, attics. Probably one of the bigger ones, you know, where you guys see a lot of problems and we see a lot of problems. When I go into a house, we're going to look at three things. We're going to look, how's your insulation depth, so your R value. We're going to look at, is your attic properly vented, and is it air sealed? So I would say 95% of the homes I go in, even new homes that are a few years old, don't get air sealed. Obviously the older ones never were air sealed, and a lot of the newer ones still aren't. It's sort of code. It's loosely called out in the code book that stuff should be air sealed, but it's not really happening. So even houses that are a year or two old may not be air sealed. So that's the first thing you want to look for, because that's going to be, again, the most important part of any problem that's going to happen. Second thing is going to be your ventilation. When we talk ventilation, really, ventilation is kind of your backup to your air sealing. So if you do happen to get moisture in an attic, the ventilation is what's going to be clearing that moisture out, right? So I'd say it's, you know, second most important. You're always going to have some moisture in an attic, but if you can knock that down by, you know, keeping your conditioned air in the home, you're going to have less moisture in an attic. You'll run into issues where, like, if it's a foggy day outside, if it's foggy outside and your attic's ventilated well, it's going to be foggy in your attic. So you'll see a lot of problems, more so, let's say early spring and very late fall, where you get those, you know, days that are 30 to 40, 35 to 40, where you can't see driving down the road. Well, there's that much moisture inside an attic, because that ventilation's sucking it through. So we do see a lot of frost and moisture problems happening that time of year, because you can go from 45 to 25 the next day, and there's still, you know, 80% moisture in an attic. So if you ever are seeing, you know, a ridiculous amount of moisture in the attics that time of year, that could be part of it. So ventilation, obviously, again, if you get any heat loss or air leakage into an attic, that should dry that out for you. And then we look at R value. So we make sure it's air sealed. And when I talk air sealing, so we're looking at any penetration in an attic. So wire penetrations, plumbing penetrations, bath fans, can lights, chimneys, you name it. Tops of walls themselves, they actually leak between the top plate and the drywall seam. So that's actually a pretty leaky area. So get all the air sealing done, the ventilation done, and then get your R value. So that's your thermal value. So if you have those three basic things done in an attic, probably going to have very limited issues. Now, you know, in some of the older homes, we're kind of limited on how much insulation we can put in, especially the story-and-a-half homes, the cubbies and slope ceilings. I got a slide on that later. Those are probably the most complicated ones, but we can spend 10-15 minutes on that at the end, because honestly, we see probably most. They're hardest to understand, and there's so many different ways they can be done, and so many different problems that you can run into on those types of homes. Kind of basic rules of ventilation. Obviously, you want an intake, you want an exhaust. Typically, you want low on high, you know, low on intake, high on exhaust. And you want close to equal amounts. So if you have, say, 5 square feet of intake at the bottom you kind of want 5 square feet of exhaust at the top. If I was leaning towards having more at one spot, I'd probably have more intake than exhaust, but as equal as you can get it, the better it'll work. Typically, we don't want to have more than one area of intake or exhaust. So I'm sure you've got a house where you see, okay, we got a ventilated soffit, we got a ridge vent, we got a couple turbine vents, and we got gable end vents. It's like, okay, you got 2 exhausts, you got 2 intakes. So a lot of times it's actually better to, okay, let's block off the gable ends, or let's block off the turbine vents, and just get 1 intake, 1 exhaust. Now, the only time that I recommend, and I might be one of the only ones that'll tell you to do this, is very low pitched roofs. If we have intake at the eave and we have a ridge vent in the summer, or if there's no snow, that's the best system you can have: intake at the bottom and the ridge vent, because it's continuous at the top. Now, real world scenario, you got a 312 pitch ranch roof and we got 2 feet of snow. The ridge vent isn't doing much, covered with 3 feet of snow. So I will tell homeowners or customers, I don't have a problem throwing gable end vents on a ranch style house when you got a very low pitch roof like that, because the only time it's gonna, I'll say, cross ventilate is mostly summer, and I'm not too worried about ventilation in the summer, really. I'm much more worried about it in the winter, because that's when you're gonna have your moisture problems. Summer, it's gonna be 120, 130 degrees up there regardless of how much ventilation you have. So that's about one of the only cases that I'll say, let's mix and match, because once that ridge vent gets covered up, those gable vents will then kick in and take over for your exhaust. So your soffit should still be your intake, your gable ends will kick in and pick up the slack for the ridge vent. So everybody kind of follow that concept. So if you're doing the science, everybody tell you not to do that, but I've seen it fix a lot of problems that they can't get the moisture out of their attic. We pop those vents in and she's gone. So it's about the only time I'll recommend telling people to mix them. Let's see. Let's just go to the pictures. So yeah, we just got a bunch of pictures here. Obviously, ice damming.
Nice.
It's going to be one of your most, other than hotspots, ice damming is going to be one of your most obvious ways to identify heat loss, air leakage, those sorts of problems. Not every ice dam that we run into is associated with heat loss or air leakage. We run into springtime. Our winter's been getting kind of crazy. We got 21 day, 50 the next, 3 feet of snow, 2 inches of rain. So some of that can be associated with just weather. Sometimes you just have to talk to a homeowner. You're like, okay, I'm looking at your roof. There's no hot spots, but you have ice dams like this. Sometimes they're receptive, you don't have a problem. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So we just kind of got to make that decision on why is this happening. Usually pick their brain, have you had ice dams before? No, I haven't had ice dams in 5 years. Okay. Well, they're a foot thick and they're 10 feet long this year. Why? Probably weather related, right? If they're saying, yep, I get ice dams in this 15-foot area every single year, there's probably an insulation or air leakage problem. So not every ice dam is caused by heat loss, but a vast majority of them are. So that's a good way to identify where they might have a problem specifically. If they only have it in a 5-foot section, we can narrow it down to something's happening directly above that. We fix a lot of those. Just a picture of a common wire hole. We air seal those, whether you're using a 2-part foam, 1-part foam, caulk, whatever. It'll leak here, but it'll also leak in these seams. So this is your drywall ceiling looking down on the top plate. So this is just important as these holes are. You wouldn't think that would leak much air when you got that sheetrock pinned against the, the ceiling and a wall, but it actually leaks a ton, so, yeah.
I don't know if you can touch base on this, but I see that that's fiberglass insulation.
Yep.
Fiberglass does not do anything as far as air sealing, but cellulose does, correct?
Yes and no.
More so than.
Yeah, definitely. So fiberglass is going to be a much more porous insulation, right? So when people ask, why is we got a foot of insulation up there, why is that stuff still leaking? I say, okay, what's a furnace filter made out of? It's made out of fiberglass. So it's designed for air to move through it. Cellulose, correct. We blow it in, obviously it'll settle, but it actually makes it a better insulator once it does settle because it becomes a dense product and it makes it harder for the air to work up through it or down through it. So it'll slow down that stack effect even without air sealing, but the air will still go through it, but it'll slow it down way more than the fiberglass. Yeah. And just touching base on the fiberglass, so fiberglass obviously will lose more R value the colder it gets. So, say somebody's got 12 inches of fiberglass in an attic, if we just go in there and lay 6 inches of cellulose over the top of that cellulose will kind of make a crust over that fiberglass. So what it'll do is actually warm the fiberglass, and you'll get more efficiency out of the blown fiberglass than you would without that topping of cellulose. So that's why a lot of times, whether they meant to or not, you'll see cellulose over the top of fiberglass, but you actually gain a lot of efficiency out of the fiberglass by doing that. So, and again, just stops that airflow. Yeah.
So if they had fiberglass, would it be better to just put a layer of cellulose over the top, or remove the fiberglass and do all cellulose?
Depends on how much they want to spend, right? That's the biggest thing. We do a lot of removal, probably 50%. We do probably more removal because people don't want to deal with pests, insects, mice. The cellulose has borates in it, so a fire retardant that it's treated with, and it will act as a pest and like mouse retardant. You get into talking Orkins and some of these places, they actually have cellulose insulation that has a couple percent more borate in it, and they market it as a pest control product. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely remove it. It's usable insulation, so if somebody wants to leave it there, it'll definitely work. The problem with it is if you got a foot and we go through your entire attic, it gets matted down so bad. It just never comes back. But again, your average attic is maybe a few $1,000s to get it out and then put extra back in. So I mean, depending on size, but it adds quite a bit. But and we can. Nice thing about fiberglass is we can push it around pretty easily, where cellulose is kind of like digging in the sand. You push it away and it just wants to keep falling back in. For fiberglass, push it away, you can do a pretty nice job air sealing. And again, the air sealing is more important. So if you can get a good air seal and then just blow over the top of all that stuff, probably all right. But we definitely do it both ways, and a lot of it both ways. So.
Cost-wise, what fiberglass versus cellulose?
Fiberglass is quite a bit more. You're probably talking at least another third. Yeah, for fiberglass than cellulose.
How come you see it 90% of the time?
Insulation companies,
Yeah.
especially larger ones. So if you're like a consolidated company or a company that kind of specializes more new and commercial, they're going to have much better pricing if they buy all fiberglass from one distributor than if they're buying cellulose, a little bit of fiberglass. So they like to blow one product, get it in, get it out of there kind of deal. So, but yeah, I would say we probably blow 95 or maybe more of the percent of attics with cellulose. Yeah, and 99.5% of our existing homes are going to use cellulose. So, the other thing with the fiberglass too is it's much harder to blow. We do a lot of dense packing. So like in the Molder houses, we're doing walls, or we're doing them slope ceilings. A A lot of times it's a 2x4, maybe a 2x6, might already have some insulation in it. We gotta use a pretty small tube, like inch and a quarter. The fiberglass likes to clump up and clog your hoses, but the cellulose will push through there and pack tighter.
So you dense pack with cellulose as well?
Yeah, you can do it with fiberglass, we just don't have nearly as good a luck.
Really?
So we use cellulose in retrofit home.
Oh.
In retrofit homes.
Well,
In new construction, we do a lot of dense packing with fiberglass.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of opposites. I would actually prefer to dense pack fiberglass in new homes, but all cellulose in existing.
Because it'll settle, right?
Cellulose is very picky in a thicker cavity. You got to do it absolutely perfect, or you will have either settling. If you have just a touch of an underpack, it'll settle 2 inches.
Yeah.
And if you overpack it, it's
Oh,
absolutely a nightmare. Yeah, you can't just kind of push it in like you can a fiberglass. You got to cut it, pull some out, and start over. So the fiberglass dense packing in new construction is much more user friendly. I actually think it comes down to the install. You get a better product because you get a better install. Yeah. So.
What are the ways that you dense pack? Do you do it from the outside or from the inside or the top or all three or 6, 7?
Just whatever the situation calls for. So,
2-story blue frame.
the balloon frames typically we're gonna do it from the outside, right? The tricky one with the balloon frames are a lot of times the floor joists are open. So they built your wall, so you got an 18-foot tall wall. They got the floor joist just into the wall cavity. So you're trying to dense pack, and you end up dense packing maybe filling 8 feet of floor, loose fill, before it'll pack. So you're just blowing and blowing and blowing. You're like, where's it going? Well, it's going into the floor system, and once that floor system gets full, then it'll start to pack it out. But we do it from the outside. We do it from the inside. We can do it from the tops of interior walls. Like if somebody wants an interior wall done, we can drill through the top plate like that. Most of the time, we're doing it from the outside on an existing home, always from the inside on a new construction.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Can you actually have too much insulation around like a water pipe so that it would actually act in reverse and make it more prone to freezing?
I would
or
say,
not?
if you got a water pipe in the outside wall, you're probably in a bad situation anyways. We definitely try to make sure that we don't isolate pipes to the outside. If you can get enough insulation behind it, typically you're gonna be okay. I've never ran into that situation where we found a water pipe in the outside wall, insulated it, and isolated it to the cold where it did freeze. We just don't seem to run into very many water lines in the outside wall cavities on the older homes for some reason.
No, the reason I ask is I had a contractor tell me that this summer, that it was too much insulation is a bad thing, so.
Yeah.
I was pretty skeptical of that.
Yeah. If you have too much insulation in the wrong area, like say if you put it on the wrong side of a pipe and you're isolating it to unconditioned space, and then you're stopping heat from getting to that pipe, then I could definitely see that. But as long as you got it in the right spot, on the right side of it, you should be okay. So I haven't run into that. Yeah.
Do you touch any attics that have vermiculite in them?
Yes. So yes and no. So I got a picture of that too. Is everybody familiar with vermiculite? Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just run
Tastes good.
What's that?
Tastes good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I like the roll.
You like to roll on it? Yeah.
Put it in a
I'm gonna make an AI
Throw it
video
in.
of you rolling.
Throw it in the air.
So yeah, right there, picture of vermiculite insulation, right? Basically our stance on it is if it's in an attic, we assume it has asbestos. Basically, most contractors from the state of Wisconsin pretty much have to assume it has asbestos. If you're asbestos certified, great, you can touch it. I don't know any insulation contractors that are. So basically, we typically go down the route of we bring in a BRAC thermal, if you guys have heard of them. Have them do a full remediation and spray and encapsulate. Then we can go in, air seal, ventilate, insulate. So we run into that a lot.
You leave it
What's that?
encapsulate it? Encapsulate
So they spray it. They do the removal, so they vacuum it all out.
Oh, gotcha.
and then they spray like a clear encapsulant.
Gotcha.
So when that stuff settles, it's kind of stuck. You can't even tell it's there, so I was skeptical that they actually put it on.
Right.
I was like, I don't see anything. They're like, no, it's clear, it's there. I'm like, okay, I trust you.
Okay.
So, and with the vermiculite, I handed out a brochure earlier. It's got my card on the front, a couple brochures. On the back, there's just a list of, those are kind of the bigger rebate programs that are going on. So if any homeowners have questions on that, there's multiple ones. And there's focus on energy rebates, there's Inflation Reduction Act rebates, there's all kinds of rebates through like local cooperatives like Eau Claire Energy Cooperative, Dunn Energy, Barrett Electric, that kind of stuff. So if people are asking, you know, have them give me a shout. But those are some of the bigger ones. And there's not only insulation stuff available, there's, you know, heat pump, hot water heaters and boilers, there's all kinds of stuff. So if you have questions on that, feel free to give me a holler, we can kind of run through that. But if you're seeing people with old stuff that they want to replace, they might want to point them that direction, because I mean, sometimes you're getting, I mean, people install like a mini split or a heat pump, I mean, they can get up to $8,000 back. I mean, it's pretty significant numbers. So, and why I thought of that is vermiculite removal. There's also, is anybody familiar with like the ZAI Trust or ZAI Trust out there for vermiculite? So if you find vermiculite in an attic and a homeowner wants to remove it, they can give us a call or like a BRAC Thermal call. They pull a sample, they send it in, and if it fits into this vermiculite came from a certain mine or it's a certain type, there's pretty substantial rebates. I think it's up to like, I want to say like $4,800, don't quote me on that, but it's a sizable number for removal and reinstall. And you can stack installation rebates on that. I mean, we've gotten people $15,000 back.
You're talking about the one through the state of Wisconsin? The Zoneway Fund?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it's up to 55% cost of removal of the baby.
It is, yeah, but there's a cap on it.
Yeah.
And I think I want to say it's like that $4,800, give or take, but yeah, there's a lot of rebates out there, so we do that a lot. Obviously, we're working in conjunction with a asbestos certified company, but I don't see very many that test as not being able to qualify for that. Every once in a while there is for some reason, but yeah, there's some pretty substantial rebates, and obviously, usually when people find it, you know, if somebody's trying to buy that house, probably want it gone, so we do that a lot.
Will you guys blow over the top of it, say homeowners like, I don't wanna spend money, I don't wanna deal with it, I just wanna add some insulation?
We used to, we don't anymore. We just kind of went with so here's the problem with doing that. Vermiculite is a terrible insulator. It has almost zero R value, right? So you can take a house. Right now there's a ton of air leakage, there's a ton of heat loss. There's no problems in their attic. All of a sudden because we can't add ventilation because we can't disturb the vermiculite. We can't air seal it. So what happens is we go in, we'll add, okay, we're gonna add a foot insulation, it'll be great. All of a sudden you cooled that attic. So you drop the temperature at that roof deck. You still have the same amount of air leakage and you have less or no ventilation. All of a sudden they got a pile of moisture in their attic and it's frosting and it's dripping. Now it's who touched it last, the insulators did.
Sure.
So not only that, even though we're not really disturbing it, we're disturbing it. So employee-wise, don't really touch it. So we just kind of went with, got to do a full remediation if you want us to do any work in it, which is the right way to go. But there's definitely people that just want to top it off. We just wouldn't be the people to do it. But you know, any other questions on vermiculite at all? Yeah, that's a good example of sometimes you can cause more problems by insulating than, you know, you're causing a problem, not fixing it, even though you're adding a bunch of insulation. So if you don't know what you're doing with insulation, it doesn't seem overly complicated, but you can definitely, as soon as you start air sealing this and insulating that, you're changing how the whole house performs or operates, yeah. So you can definitely make problems. If you got, you know, so you got a half a house, this side is very leaky and this side is very leaky. You air seal half the house. Well, now this side of the house is going to want to leak twice as much. So you're sealing this, now this is going to be twice as leaky. So you can fix some problems over here, make a problem over here. So kinda gotta watch what you're doing, make sure you're not gonna make another problem by fixing one. So it can get a little complicated once in a while, but again, it's just all about the concepts and, yeah. Any more on that? Nope. I might as well go down to this one. So this is another one that kinda shuts us down. Knob and tube wiring, kind of the same stance on our end as vermiculite. If it's there, it's got to be completely removed. I get in a lot of houses, they're like, well, it's dead. I'm like, okay, well, it's still there. So in my head, it could be live, and 95% of it might be dead. Well, if one wire is still live and we insulate over it, it's on us. So even if it's dead, I ask them to cut it out, have an electrician cut it out, or they can go up and cut it out. If the wire ain't there, I know it's dead, but yeah, we definitely don't insulate around it, can't insulate around it. So same thing, vermiculite, take it out and we can start doing our insulating.
Well, if it's hanging from the rafters versus, do you still do it, or you want it gone?
I mean, it's, even if 90% is hanging from the rafters, it's gotta go down at some point, right?
Yeah.
So,
But if it's hanging from the rafters, but it's cut where it goes down, and they just left it on the rafters. Then
if it was up on the rafters and I seen every wire was completely cut, yeah, then I'm okay with it. Yeah, then I'm alright with it. If I can be 100% sure, then I'm good with it. But
just
and
as
you,
long as none of it's actually going down into the.
exactly, yeah. The hard part to find is sometimes when you get in the floored attics, right? So the walk-up attics, those are where we gotta start. When they say my house was built in the 1920s, which is mostly attics you're looking in the 1900s, 10s, 20s, those are the ones with the big walk-in attics. So that's when we gotta start lifting floorboards and trying to figure out, is it under the floor, that kind of stuff. So. And it is in walls. We don't see it nearly as much in walls, but you definitely get it. Most of the older houses are, all the electrical's kind of on the interior walls, or isn't as much on the outside. So we don't run into it too much in walls, but we still got to be careful because it definitely gets there. So. Any other questions on knob and tube? So yeah, those are the only two things that really shut us down. Everything else we can find a way to do it, just what and how much kind of deal. Yeah, so this is a big one. I'm just kind of hitting, typical areas of heat loss or air leakage. So that's gonna be like a chimney chase for like a hot water heater, fireplace, something like that. Old furnace. I see this all the time. A lot of times they're covered up. They got a piece of batting shoved around it, or they just got a blown insulation that's just barely hanging on. But that's a huge one. Every time we see a chimney flue or pipe, we'll pull the insulation away. We use all fire rated or fireproof materials. So we're going to use either cement boards or rock wools. You got to air seal is the big thing. You can't just put a piece of rock wool around it and think it's going to stop the air leakage. It's got to be something rigid. Use a lot of coil stock because it's easy to cut. So we'll cut a piece of coil stock in there, nail it to the plates, and then use a fire rated caulk around it to seal it. Then we wrap like a rock wool fiberglass bat around the flue because it's fireproof. Then you can blow the insulation up to that. But that's a big one. We see that almost every attic you go into, if it's got a flue, it's going to have some sizable hole around it. It's 95% of the time, even if you can't see it without digging down. But this one's a little harder to tell. But what this one is a drop soffit. So a lot of the older houses got the drop soffits above kitchens or bathrooms. Again, 85% of the time, they probably don't have a top on them. If they do have a top, and when I say a top, this drops a foot, you really would want sheetrock up on the ceiling before they built the soffit. That's the ideal situation. Most of the time they built the soffit, then sheetrock, so that's an open cavity. So not only is that, it's connecting with the outside walls. So the outside walls leaking air, and sometimes interior walls, which is actually worse because there's no insulation in them. So that connects to the attic, and it just pulls air like crazy out of the house. Just another area of heat loss. A lot of times they'll even have sheetrock above them, but it never got, like the seams never got fire taped. So there's a half-inch gap between all the sheetrock. Does the same thing, just pours out of there. So we go in there, we either put a top on those, and then spray foam it is usually what we'll do. Just kind of make the sheetrock for them, so you're stopping again that stack effect. So, but drop soffits, again, 85% of them don't have a top on them, or they're not, the top that is there isn't sealed. And those can be tricky to fix because they're almost always in the eave, so they're hard to get at. But we try to hire small, get down there and get them. Another one here, duct chase. If you see ducting in an attic, chances are it's got a chase where everything's coming up, and it's gonna look like that. Almost every single time. Again, same concept. Get something around there that's rigid, spray foam in place, stop the air leakage, stack effect, good to go. So pretty simple fix. It's just identifying all the problems. So yeah, if you got ducting in an attic, a lot of times you'll see like this one is surprising. I stole this picture from the internet, but like if this was in Wisconsin, I would bet that this wall would be black.
Yeah.
From moisture in air leakage. So that's a pretty common thing, or something I look for a lot. If I see a gable end, it's got black all over it, there's some sort of chase or air leakage right along that, causing condensation on that wall. So just other common things that we're air sealing, you know, light boxes, electrical boxes and ceilings. The biggest thing is to make sure you get all the penetrations. A lot of times people just like to air seal down here. You still need to air seal on like these blue boxes. All these things will leak just as much as around the box. But can lights. Everybody thinks these ones are kind of airtight as well, and they do make some airtight ones. Usually they have the full box enclosure. Those are much better. But a can light like this, I mean, they leak like a sieve. How many people are familiar with like blower door testing here? Yeah. So I mean, when you blower door test that, I mean, it's like, I mean, air's pouring through there. It pours through all the gaps in the canister itself, like around the ring, around the base, any of these holes, the seams. When we do these, we actually build an insulated box right over them. So we build a foam board box, seal the box to the sheetrock. We use a sheetrock top because it's air permeable, and then seal that top on, and then blow over the top. So you have your clearance. So if you box them, the nice thing about that is you can put that over the non-IC rated ones and the IC rated ones. So we're not seeing too many non-IC rated cans anymore. 15 years ago, we're still seeing a lot in attics. I might only see 10 a year now where they're, you know, insulation's pulled back 2 feet from a can light because they know it's going to start a fire if they blow over that thing. But and most of the time, people are pretty receptive to that can light's 100 years old and it's glowing warm in your attic. You should probably get that replaced. So usually, if I see the non-ICs, I'll have people replace them. It doesn't cost the electrician much to pop some new ones in there, and then we can box it and we know we're good to go. But those are, if you see a house with 50 can lights in it, I mean, they all leak and they leak like a sieve. This is another big one. See it a lot. Had a new roof put on. We don't use the chimney anymore. Let's just knock that baby down a foot from the roof. That'll be fine. Well, I think I got another picture. I'll come back to that one. Must not have it in there. But you'll see above that, this looks like a pretty new roof. But if you look above that, chances are that thing is going to be, again, black, starting to flake the sheeting. If it's sheeting, rot that thing out. The bad thing about the chimneys too is not only will it leak at the top, it's still going to act like a chimney, but even around the base. If you got a 2x2 chimney, chances are they got a 2.5 by 2.5 hole around that thing for the chase, just like one of the duct chases. So you usually got to air seal around them, and that's cap the top. So every once in a while, I'll be surprised and find one of them capped, but 99% of the time they're just wide open in the attic, and I can pull up and see, see a square on the roof. Okay. That's where our old chimney was. You can just see the air pouring out and hitting the roof and melting the snow.
Jesse,
Yeah,
I got a question about cam lights.
yeah.
What about the new LED wafers? What do you do with those?
Not put them in a ceiling.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, let's see. What if they're in the ceiling?
Yeah,
now?
so we do the same thing. We put a box on them.
Okay.
So we just use a lot smaller box, height box.
Okay.
But even though they have the gasket on them,
They're still.
they don't always, the gasket doesn't work that well. They're decent, but we still box them. So if there's a can light or a puck light, we're gonna box it. I'll say they're very popular for a little while, and a lot of electricians are still using them in attics. But a lot of the builders are finding, if they're certifying their homes through Focus on Energy or something, and they're blower dooring that thing, well, they're seeing that those things are leaking, they're becoming a problem. So most of the builders are kind of going away from putting them in attics or ceilings of where it's connected to an attic. So, yeah, we just recommend not putting them in a ceiling connected to an attic.
Okay.
Yeah. Alright, can light, yeah, I'm guessing we've all seen this, bath fan ducted into an attic. So if we're gonna see that, we recommend using either rigid pipe on a bath fan, or we use a lot of flexible insulated. We don't use the uninsulated. Most bath fans now, we use Panasonic Whisper Quiet fans in pretty much every scenario. They come with a 4-inch outlet. If we adapt that to a 4 to 6 and then use 6-inch ducting, you gain flow. We actually did one today. When we got to the house, the fan was doing 70, which isn't terrible. So we tested it. That was a Panasonic that was already in the house. So we tested it was at 70. We pulled the existing 4-inch ducting off. We upgraded that to a 6-inch, and we got it to 98. So makes a big difference getting that volume. Even though you're necking it back down to a 4, getting that volume helps a lot with the flow. If you take a 110 CFM fan and put a 4-inch flex on it like that, you might be down to 70, 60. So it knocks the efficiency of those fans down a lot. You can also use a 4-inch rigid pipe, and you'll get just as good a flow as you will like a 6-inch insulated. They just take a little more time to run. And then usually if we're doing rigid, we'll want to insulate that pipe just so it's not condensating. So if you're running it a lot and it condensates, it'll build up in the, I pulled these out before where they're 20 pounds. You're like, what am I going to do with this thing? I'm in an attic and there's 10 gallons of water in this thing. So they'll fill up with water. So if they're not insulated, a lot of times they will fill up with water. But yeah, use a 4-inch rigid or a 6-inch flexible insulated. You get the same flow. Neither of them will have condensation problems. We either recommend running a roof vents or gable end vents. We don't recommend into the soffit. Reason being, we're going to ventilate those soffits really well, right? So what's happening is you're blowing warm moist air into the soffit. Your ventilation's doing its job. It's sucking the moisture right back in the attic. Just not the way to do it. Try to get people to not vent it into the soffits. Some people are not going to be real receptive to it, but I've just seen it too many times where you look in there, you look down towards the eave, and you'll see, 1 or 2 cavities are just completely black. It's either a source of air leakage, like we talked about, wire hole or something out on that top plate, or there's going to be a fan ducted in there and it's sucking the moisture back in. So, pretty common. I don't know how often you guys see it, but I see it probably almost every day. This one's a little more on the new construction side. We kind of see, older homes have their certain set of problems, and then new constructions have their set of problems. So when I'm in a house from 1930, I'm going to look for very specific things, 1960s specific things. A house that was built after 2000, very specific things, just based on like people's framing tendencies and tendencies of building practices when that house was built. This is just an example of like this wall. They put an addition on here. This wall, somebody's just going to put fiberglass insulation in there. There's no backing on it. So I mean, that's kind of like having your drywall insulation and no sheeting or siding, right? So it's gonna be very easy for air leakage through that and just heat loss. We always recommend having a backer on a wall, and we like to use like spray foam because you're gaining R value. So if you insulate that wall with batting, great, and then you put a layer of 1.5 inches, 2 inches of spray foam over the back of that, you're stopping any thermal bridging through the studs, and you're completely air sealing that wall cavity, so you don't have any problems. But again, this is something that we see every day, even in new construction. A lot of companies will just put a bat in there, put something on the back of the wall, a strip of Tyvek or something to hold that in there, and that does meet code. It's just not the right way to do it. And you'll see it in newer houses. You'll see that causing problems where they got air leakage coming out the top, or and again, it's carrying the moisture. So if you can stop that transfer, fixing all your problems. Just an example of an attic I was in the other day. I can't remember what the problem was, but there was obviously a lot of moisture. It was just starting to kind of rot out or flake out the sheeting from so much moisture over so many years. See that? It's pretty common too.
Jesse, I saw one so bad that in between the trusses on the
Yep.
roof, it looked like a roller coaster.
I can believe that. Yeah. I see a lot of them too where like the joints in the
They
ceiling.
were gonna be
plywood.
selling the house
Yeah.
and basically told them like, probably gonna have to take the roof off, the decking. They had a contractor out there to do air sealing and all that stuff, with
Yep.
ventilation, and it was a
Yep.
bathroom fan that had been embedded up in the attic for years.
Yep. Yeah. It really doesn't take a lot. I mean, you're pumping a lot of moisture up in there, it can happen pretty fast. So yeah, I've been there.
Have you ever seen a kitchen, a stove,
Oh,
red
yeah.
hood,
Oh, yeah.
vented into the attic?
Lots of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, happens all the time. I don't know why that is or why it's so common.
Yeah.
You know, you got your rectangle going up there and that's it.
Yeah.
Very common.
Homeowner put it in and figured it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's what people don't understand too. Is like, now you can get in attics, which is kind of funny. But going back to that bath vent thing, they'll have the duct just tied up to the truss, and they'll even put a vent on it, a flapper vent. It's like, all right. So I see that all the time. Like, okay, he tried, but.
Don't want it coming back in.
Yeah, don't want a bat crawling in there or something. I don't know what they got going on, but it's pretty funny when I see that thing stubbed up and a flapper vent on it.
He told the boys he took care of it.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah,
Fuck everything.
exactly. This is another common thing. And I see this a lot in new construction. So basically you got a wall cavity, right? And you got a drywall in the other, so matching the trusses. There's no top on this wall. So heat's gonna get inside that cavity, and it's gonna get sucked up. And obviously you can see, I don't think this one was that old, but I mean it rotted out in just a few years.
What's your guy do there? Cause I got that in the garage right now.
You got this?
It's
So
not sheetrock yet, but what
okay.
I do.
Yep. So basically what we do is we put, if you're gonna use fiberglass batting, right, for this wall, put it
Dense
into,
pack, yeah.
you could dense pack,
Yeah.
but the easiest way is put batting into this line,
Yeah.
and then we spray foam that top shut. So we make a top plate.
Yeah.
So in new construction, we looked at for that a lot. Does it have a bottom plate? Does it have a top plate? If you don't have, insulation is rated as in a box in an enclosed cavity. So if you don't have 6 sides, you don't have a cavity. So usually they're missing the tops. That's the most common thing. So a lot of times we make the top of spray foam. If you can just put something rigid in there, you won't have problems. But that's extremely common and not caught very often. So, yeah. I'd say this is probably 75% of new constructions that have a vault have this type of framing. So it's common. You'll start seeing this more and more as these houses get a little older. You'll start seeing more of those problems in the newer homes, 2000s and newer. Here's a good one. So we call it ghosting. Basically, you can see all the roof joists, like ceiling joists. Typically due to lack of R value, just lack of insulation in an attic. what'll happen there is you really don't see it, but, you know, say this is a 2x6 joist that sheetrock's nailed to, and they got 4 inches of blown insulation or just some fiberglass batting laying up there. But thermal bridging is so bad that it'll actually basically turn that sheetrock under those joists to frost. You don't really see it typically. This specific house had a wood burning fireplace, so wood burning fireplaces make it happen faster. It keeps coming back faster because the soot sticks to the joist. Candles will do it too. You know, if somebody's burning a ton of candles. Typically, that's a pretty easy fix. Add insulation, get those joists covered with insulation, stop that, basically stop the dew point or the thermal bridging, and that'll go away. Can be difficult sometimes to fix. Like this was actually right in the middle of the house, so that isn't even the eaves. She had 3 inches of insulation, so we top that off and it'll be fine. But sometimes it's difficult to fix if it's in a very eave because you can only get so much insulation there. So a lot of times we'll actually like put a piece of fiberglass out in there, like a stuffer underneath fiberglass or under a ventilation chute. And we actually spray foam that in place. We'll spray foam out onto the sheetrock, maybe 6 inches. We try to wrap that joist, ceiling joist, with inch or inch and a half of foam, maybe in like a foot, and just try to stop that thermal bridging. It doesn't always work, but most of the time you can get it enough temperature difference taken out of it to really slow it down. It might take way longer, but it's just getting the temperature difference out of those joists. But we see this a lot, very common.
This isn't so bad, is it, if it has a top there like that?
No, that's good.
Okay.
You're golden.
Oh,
You're golden.
that's enough, so
You're
that's.
golden. She thought I had another job.
Your competitor, yeah.
All right.
I'll tell them they fucked up.
So types of ventilation. You know, most common ones, ventilation chute, going down into your soffits. I'm sure everybody know how this works. Goes down into your soffits, gonna pull air above the insulation, and then you're gonna use your gable ends, your whirlybirds, your ridge vents to be your exhaust. So pretty common. Most efficient way to do it, like to put ventilation in every single cavity. You can get the even airflow through every single cavity and cool that entire roof deck. It's going to help with just overall ventilation and keeping the roof deck cool, so you're not having any condensation, frost, that kind of stuff. So if you can get it equally vented all the way around, put one in every cavity, it goes a long way. Ridge vent, pretty straightforward. Talked about that. As long as they're not covered in 3 feet of snow, you can't beat them for performance. So they work the best if they're not covered and cut out. I mean, I don't know how many attics we've been into. It's like, I got a ridge vent. It's like, it's there, it's not working, and they didn't cut it out. So, or they cut it out and then they tar papered over it. It's like, okay, they tried. Gable vents. Again, I'm actually a really big fan of them because they're always working. A lot of people don't like them. I really like them. They're just dependable. You know they're going to be there when you need them.
Tucked under the eave and they're
Yeah. You never have an issue with them. So the only thing I don't like about them is sometimes the volume is so much. You can't cut a big enough hole or a hole as big as you would want, but they pull enough to get air moving through there all the time. So power vents. So everybody's thought on power vents: good, bad, like them, don't like them.
How are you working the work?
So I'm a big fan of power vents when needed, but here's the tricky thing about power vents. So you can cause a lot of problems with power vents, and you can fix a lot of problems with power vents. If you're using a power vent, you have to make sure you have very good intake ventilation, because that thing's going to pull a lot of air, right? So they're great if you have a perfectly air sealed attic, because if you don't and you have a lack of ventilation, where's that air going to get pulled from? It's going to pull it from the house. So you're pulling a lot of moisture in. I get into a lot of houses like, I put in this power vent, and now my attic's full of frost. I'm like, yep, okay. We got to air seal this thing. We got to let it pull air from somewhere else. It's pulling it from the house. So if we can get your attic air sealed really, really well, and we can get intake ventilation from your soffits or somewhere else, whatever you would need, the power vents work great because they're pulling a lot of volume of air through that attic, and they'll really cool an attic down well. Just got to make sure you use them in the right scenario because they can make more problems than they can fix. Again, if you're not using them correctly.
How does it work as far as programming for the seasons, right?
So,
they're supposed to automatically come on when needed, correct? Or
Well,
you have to manually do it?
you can, like electricians can do a few different things. They can do it temperature, or they can do humidity,
Yeah.
right? Myself, they don't really need to run in summer at all. Like, yeah, you could cool your attic a little bit, but it's not gonna be enough to do anything. I'm really more so, again, worried about ventilation in the winter. So if I'm telling people to do it, I just tell them to put it on a switch and run it all winter, pretty much. Summer, again, if you don't have ventilation in your attic, probably not gonna have any issues. So, much more important in the winter.
I ran across one that was at least solar powered. In my mind, I'm like, how's that gonna win in the wintertime?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure on that one. I haven't seen
I
it.
wrote it up to have it looked at.
Yeah.
Because, I don't wanna get the call their attic was drippy in the winter.
Yeah, I haven't seen any solar ones.
Yeah, I thought it was the first one. I don't know, they're not that common.
Right,
but
right.
I've never seen a solar one before.
I only recommend them when we've done everything we can and we can't fix the problem. That'll usually take care of what we need it to do. But we just gotta kind of exhaust all our other resources first and then pop one of those in. But when you need them, they work. We actually did like over off 53. There's a big like assisted living right on. It's by like the fairway, kind of by the country club there.
Yeah.
We ended up putting in a bunch of those, and they were seeing that whole complex because they're having so much ice damming. So we had to go through that. I mean, that thing was 50,000 square feet. And I mean, they had attics or room inside the attics and just batted walls, and so I mean, that was a big job. We had to completely air seal that whole thing. It was tricky because we got sheetrock ceilings, but then you got drop ceilings, so there's no rhyme or reason where the holes are. It's like I gotta put a wire through here and whack, drop the wire through the sheetrock, right? So we had to basically dig through every inch of that place, air seal it, and then they put a bunch of those on, and all their problems went away. So, sometimes the volume is just so big of an attic on the big buildings. I mean, they're just massive attics. You can't get enough flow from some ventilation chutes and a ridge vent. You just can't. So I don't know how many power vents they put on, but it was a lot. So, but they're not having more problems.
I've ran into a couple of power vents, solar powered ones, where they have the aluminum foil laid throughout the whole attic.
Yeah.
That snake oil stuff,
Yep.
it's gonna radiate your heat.
Yep. Going to that foil stuff, I probably see it 10 times a year, right? The second you see that, I would tell people to get it out of there, because what you'll see, if you ever lift it up and you see how much moisture is trapped on the underside of that, I mean, it just drips water. So the second we see it, it's coming out. Because you can almost, maybe not in the middle of summer, but any other time you pull that up and it's just gonna be dripping with water. And a lot of times that'll create mold in your fiberglass and that kind of stuff. Another time when we remove stuff, when they get mold in it and stuff, but yeah. Whirlybirds, actually I like whirlybirds, the turbine vents. They sit high enough when they move, so they're not gonna get covered with snow. Again, you'll see these mixed with ridge vents a lot, or the ridge vent's a foot away from that thing, and it's just doing a circle,
Right.
or just doing a circle and not ventilating your attic at all. But if you're using, intake with ventilation chutes from your soffit and whirlybirds, I'm good with that. They're not as aesthetically pleasing, but
So kind of going back to the ridge vent,
Yep.
what do you suggest during winter then when that's getting
covered
covered
up.
up?
So that's where I go
The
to if
gable
it's
end.
if it's accessible, like gable end vents. If it's a ranch, if it's a hip, they're
Say
tough.
like a bi-level that's got ridge vents on it.
If you can get gable end vents in it, that's what I would do. If you can't do gable end vents, that's where I might start recommending again a power vent. But again, you have to have it air sealed. If you don't have it air sealed, it'll suck out of the house. So every situation's a little bit different. You know, I just try to look at it and say what's going to work best here. Hip roofs is where we have our most problems because you can't put gable vents in them, and a lot of times it seems like every hip roof you do is a 312. Just, I don't know why, but they got to be so low pitch. So a lot of times, even for us, it can be hard to ventilate from the eaves without pulling soffits and that kind of stuff. But if it's got gables, do gable vents. If it's a hip roof, you know, recommend getting it ventilated somehow, air sealed, and maybe a power vent. A lot of people don't like the power vents, but they just work. Basements, crawl spaces. I don't know how often you guys see it, but basement walls, it'll be worse in unfinished basements. So finished basements, obviously you don't see it because their walls are sheetrock, but I mean, how often have you seen something like this? Stud walls, if the wall's studded like this, and you can see that fiberglass insulation in it, it's actually worse the newer the home is. But if you pull that batting back and you look at that top 2 feet, a lot of times you'll see that darkening or mildew or mold. It's just all temperature difference. Why it's worse when the basement's unfinished is by putting the insulation in there, you're stopping thermal transfer, right? But what you're actually doing is you're cooling that concrete wall, so then you're making it easier for the moisture that's still going through the fiberglass batting to condensate. So the colder that wall is, the easier it's going to condensate, and you still have the air has an easy way to get there by not having drywall over it. It's still going to happen with the drywall on there, so we recommend never putting fiberglass in a concrete wall, ever. Use a spray foam, use a foam board. It still happens, it meets code, but you're going to have problems at some point. And even if you sheetrock the face of it, right, so you're stopping the moisture drive this way, if you're not sealing around the electrical boxes, you know, outlets, air's going to go right through there, carrying the moisture. The other one is, which people don't think of, is like this gap right here. So that's just connected to the floor joist. So, okay, you got your box seal spray foam, you got your wall insulated, well, there's an inch gap that they left away from the concrete wall, and the air just drops down that way. So if you don't seal that top of that gap, you got a free ride for air to get in there again. So that's a real common one. Easiest way to fix it is going to be use something that's air impermeable, so like a spray foam, foam board. This picture is a little hard to see, but if you guys heard of Thermex or CI Max, anything like that? Anybody familiar with that? It's a polyiso board, and they make it in white facing now. It used to come in just the foil facing. It actually has better R value per inch than like a regular pink or blue or green foam board, and it has a fire rating, so you can leave it exposed. So you can put it on a foundation wall, leave it exposed. It'll stop your moisture mildew problems. It actually is a very, very good insulator for foundation or block walls. If you put I'm sure you guys know, but you put the blue board on there, white board, pink, green, it's got to be covered for fire. So people got unfinished basements or having, you know, that moisture problem. It's actually harder when it's studded up because then you got to cut pieces or pull the stud wall down. But if you have a completely unfinished basement, that's a great option to go with.
What do you recommend for an R value on a basement wall?
I mean, ideally you go like 14, but even just doing a 1 inch, like a 6 or a 7, it makes a huge difference. That material isn't cheap, so a lot of times we're just doing 1 inch, and we'll take a basement that's completely uninsulated, just put 1 inch foam board on a basement, and it might raise that basement temperature 6, 7, 8 degrees. I mean, it's a lot, it's pretty significant. Even at ground temperature, you know, at 8 feet down, you're only 55-degree ground temperature, so you still have some load on that wall if you're heating it to 70. The top 2 feet, you know, if you got 2 exposed block outside, if it's 0 outside, that block is 0. So concrete has no R value. So that top 4 feet is your most important. Obviously, typically insulate all the way down, but even just a 1 inch will make a massive, massive difference. The most important thing about doing that is you can't just kind of like stick it to the wall. You have to make sure it's completely sealed. So we'll use like foam board adhesive or PL 300. We do it like a big thick bead, like 3/4 of an inch. So when you suction it to the wall, it's completely sealed on all edges. If you have air getting behind it, it's just like having fiberglass there. That air gets behind it, and that's going to mold, mildew behind there because it's got warm, moist air on a cold surface. So you want to make sure it's completely sealed on all edges.
If you're gonna finish the basement, what's your recommendation as far as cost and benefit of spray foaming the wall versus using that Thermax?
Spray foam is going to be less expensive and a little bit better in my opinion, just because it perfectly adheres to the wall, right? The Thermax is a pretty expensive material just because it has a fire rating. It's great for when you're not covering it. If in any scenario, pretty much where they're going to cover it or finish a basement, I would switch to a spray foam. Yeah, more economical, easier to install. You know, some people worry about losing a couple inches of wall space. Where if you're using spray foam, I always recommend leaving like a 1 inch gap between the stud wall and the concrete or block, and then you spray foam and you get that'll fill them behind, and you don't lose, you know, an extra 4 inches on a room if they're worried about it. So yeah, spray foam. I would go spray foam if they're gonna finish it. They're gonna sheetrock it. Yeah.
Jesse?
Yeah.
So this is kind of a long question. This kind of pertains to what we talked to last month a little bit, but there's a waterproofing company that's putting basically a waterproofing membrane on walls.
Like the drainage board?
Yeah. No, it's actually like, it's basically like a pool liner almost.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. White. Yeah.
I just found out my brother-in-law had this done to his basement. I just found that on Thanksgiving, so this kind of pertained here today.
Yep.
They put that on his poured foundation wall,
Mm-hmm.
and it's glued right onto the wall.
Yep.
He wants to finish that basement,
Mm-hmm.
so now they've got the vapor barrier on the wrong side. They've got it on, if he puts a insulation or anything on that, he's got the vapor barrier against the concrete.
So, yeah, that's a little bit of a trickier one. So, like, when you spray foam right to the concrete, obviously you're putting a vapor barrier right on the concrete, right? I would lean towards if the spray foam is compatible with that material, you probably could spray foam right over that, because really what they're using that for is probably more of a drainage plane, right?
Exactly.
So they trenched and
They did the inside.
yeah,
tile
so
and everything, yeah.
basically if you insulate it over that, you're stopping the thermal, you're getting your R value, and you shouldn't really be causing, in my opinion, any problem with vapor barrier, because they know the moisture's coming in, they're just stopping it and running it out.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, it would happen with spray foam too. Spray foam's actually very good with water. We actually, like on commercial block buildings, we'll actually spray foam right to the block on the outside of a building, and that's what they engineered the drainage plane as. So, spray foam's very, very good with water. Unless it's sitting in bulk water, it won't really soak it up. So I would bet you could spray foam right over that membrane as long as the two products are compatible. It'd be okay there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would check on that, but
Yeah.
as long as you started box seal, wrapped it, and made it one piece, I would think you'd be just fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, you bet. Let's see here. So yeah, just a picture of spray foam in the basement wall. Box sills. So the box sill or floor joist there, it's gonna be one of the leakiest points in a home. Most of the time you just walk in the house, it's got fiberglass batting stuffed in them.
Mhm.
We pull that out. Really, we're not looking for a ton of R values. You don't gotta go 3-4 inches thick. If you go 1.5 to 2 inches thick, you're accomplishing what you want, because really we're trying to stop another source of air leakage. When we talk air leakage and stack effect, so we start high and low first, as high as you can get and as low as you can. So typically the lowest place in a home that air can leak from is your box sill. Your highest is going to be your attic. So 95% of the time when we go into an existing home, we're gonna air seal your attic and spray foam your box sills. So you're really stopping the flow of that stack effect by stopping those two. Yeah, 1.5 to 2 inches of spray foam in those, you got plenty of R value, and then you're stopping all the air leakage. You wanna make sure you always come out over the sill plate. You know, you'll see all the different kinds. You'll see just fiberglass batting stacked in there. Buffalo board is a common one, sometimes a treated sill plate. Always wanna make sure you get over that. And another big thing is a lot of the older homes have open cores on the tops of the blocks. You always wanna get those stuffed and sealed. So if you got a little hairline crack to the outside, that's just another source for air leakage. So we sprinkle the top of those shut. Other thing with like block foundations and those open tops of those cores, a lot of moisture actually comes in through those. So that's connected directly to the outside. So actually like static pressure and all that kind of stuff, we put moisture from the ground actually into the home through those cores. So we just try to, again, air seal everything and stop the flow of moisture and air and all that kind of stuff. Let's see here. So these two pictures kind of pertain to each other. So this is a basement wall in a newer home. A lot of houses, especially in basements, you insulate them, put plastic on them, and then they sit there unfinished. So again, we have moisture drive out, moisture drive in, right? So a lot of people will call us and say, I got water in my basement walls. I'm like, okay. I say, where? And they say, well, I can see it in the plastic. Okay, well that's because the moisture drop's pushing in, it's pushing the moisture in. So that any vapor or moisture in that wall cavity is hitting that plastic and it's just sitting there. If you're sheetrocked, the water's still there, homeowner just can't see it. So, and in the winter, you got that plastic on it, you got your fiberglass batting in the wall, the edges of that plastic aren't sealed. So what happens is that cold cavity is sucking that moisture from that house into that wall cavity, and it's condensating on the sheeting. So a lot of times you'll pull that sheeting or that fiberglass batting and you'll see something like this. There's a couple pretty simple fixes to it. A, sheetrock it, so that'll pinch that plastic and stop any moisture drive. If they're really not interested on finishing it, a simple fix is make sure the poly is actually one piece, right? Or the seams are taped. You can do a few things. You can tape all the edges. You can nail like 1-bys or lath around the edges. We use a lot of acoustical caulk, a very pliable caulk. Just all you have to do is stop the air from getting into that cavity, and it'll stop that problem. So you might still see the moisture on the plastic in the summer, but it's going to definitely stop the moisture from getting sucked in there in the winter, causing that. So, and even on a finished wall, on a new house, you got an R21 fiberglass bat, you're gonna have frost in that wall cavity regardless. It's gonna be there. You just can't see it. So, but much worse, you run into problems when things are unfinished. Yeah, so this is basically a picture of a wall that had been sitting unfinished for, I don't know how many years, but just got so wet, just started to grow mold. So pretty simple fix. Pull it out. You can re-insulate. You can spray foam it, or finish it with some sheetrock. Let's see here. Crawl spaces. Pretty simple concept on crawl spaces, right? Kind of two ways to look at it. A lot of people call and say, okay, I want to spray foam the bottom of my floor because I have a crawl space, which will work if, the only time I recommend doing that is if it's an unheated crawl space. If you have no source of heat under there, then insulating the floor will work just fine. If there's any source of heat under there, you can get any source of heat, like say you got an addition, it's got a crawl space on it, all your heat runs run under there and go up to the rooms above, then you're going to want to insulate the perimeter, right? I tell people, treat a crawl space like it's a basement, because it is. The newer ones, most of them have concrete floors, so you don't got to worry too much about moisture. The older ones, you're going to see dirt floors, so we always put like a 6 or 10 mil plastic down, seal all the seams the best we can, just stop that soil, gas, and moisture from coming up through there. Spray foam the perimeter from floor all the way up to floor, right through the band joist, and then try to heat that area. It'll make it much more comfortable and energy efficient. So you want to treat it just like a basement, heat it just like a basement. If your house is 70, try to keep that crawl space at 70. So, we do every once in a while. We don't call it radon. We call it soil gas because we're not certified. But we'll put drain tile underneath the plastic. People are really worried about it. Put an inline fan and duct it out. Like, we'll do a box sill. If you do radon, I believe the code is you have to go through the roof. Pretty sure.
There's no
Oh,
salt.
not in Wisconsin.
There is no
Not in Wisconsin?
regulation for radon in the state of Wisconsin.
It's the Wild West. Where
Okay.
everybody do.
I was thinking you always had to go out the
Minnesota's a
rough, but
completely different animal.
yeah. So we usually go out the box hill. We don't put in too many of those, but people are really worried about it.
Well, the kids go up and stick their face.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So we call it soil gas, not radon. So
Soil gas.
yeah, just moisture and soil gas.
Just like
Do you
before
use-
organic growth, and you said mold, I'd never say that. it would-
Right.
Do
Exactly.
you use radon foam then when you soil gas foam? There's
This is
soil gas caulking at Menards, so I was just.
Never heard of
Wait,
it.
what?
Never heard of
There's
it.
radon caulking at Menards.
No.
And ours will sell anything.
Yeah.
Make a penny off.
I just, if you have radon foam, use that.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we're not certified, so we just
That's
use
funny.
Soil
just
gas
use
foam.
regular foam.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, hey, times are tough. You gotta
I hear
sell.
you. I hear you. You gotta do it. It's all
Sell,
about marketing,
you
right?
get your ass up.
It's all about marketing.
Yep.
Oh. So we touched base on. Any questions on crawl space or anything? How we treat them? Good. Story and a half style homes. So probably the trickiest ones. Even some of my employees have a hard time figuring them out. There's so many different ways you can insulate them, right, wrong. Really got to look at, ask a homeowner what. When I go into a cubby, I open the knee wall door. I look in there and say, what's there, what's started. A lot of times the ceiling's insulated, the wall's insulated, the floor's insulated. Like they're just insulated, all will be good. Really want to pick a thermal boundary. So you got two options. You can either insulate like the eave, and then go right up the roof. Some people want those areas to be heated. They're putting stuff in there. They don't want it to be either really hot or really cold. So you can go that route. So you obviously got to insulate the ceiling. You got to get down through that floor system to seal off that eave, and then you just continue up the slope into the flat attic. Other option is to come down your slopes, down your knee wall, across the floor. The tricky thing about those is then you got to ventilate that thing somehow. So you got to have. You still want intake and exhaust. So they get a little ugly. So then you're trying to put a whirlybird or a box vent, down in here. Does it have soffit vents? Can you even ventilate it here? Or do we got to put gable vents on here? Or, where are we getting air from to keep this cubby from getting moisture in it? You're going to ventilate this area. When you run into these 3.5 homes, typically this dealer right here is a 2x4 or 2x6, and it's already full insulation. So it's not like you're ever going to get ventilation from that eave all the way up through that slope into the flat attic. So we kind of treat them as their own area. Every once in a while you get lucky and you can get a ventilation chute there, but that's 1 out of 500. So these can get tricky. It's what do people want? How are they using them? What do you want to use it for? And kind of what's already started. So just got to make sure you got this. If you're doing it this route, over here, you got to do the whole ceiling, get the floor joist, and then obviously do the both ends of it. So, and a lot of times you'll get there, and again, it's got everything's insulated, and then they'll have ventilation in it too, or they insulate the ceiling, but they cut a hole for a box vent in. It's like, okay, well, you insulated the ceiling, but now you put a hole in it, so it's not. It's still cold. So these are probably the trickiest for people to figure out. Again, once you get the concept, it's pretty simple. Pick a way to insulate it, the thermal boundary never changes, they're the same on every one, and how are we ventilating it if we need to. The biggest thing with these, insulation wise, is especially when we're going with this option here, usually a lot of times when we're doing those, we're going to spray foam those roofs and just make them a heated space. Then you don't have to worry about any ventilation at all. They're heated. The thing then you do got to worry about is covering that with sheetrock or making it fire rated somehow. A lot of times the easiest way is just spray foam that ceiling, and then we have a paint, intumescent paint that we can put over it, and that'll get you your rating. Doesn't look quite as nice as maybe a finished sheetrock ceiling, but it's usually better to get some sheetrock up in there and get it all, taped and mudded. When we're doing these style, I got another one. A lot of times, your biggest thing is the knee wall is going to leak, so a lot of times I got a door going in there. Well, if that thing isn't insulated or air sealed, it's just a free ride for air to get out. So typically you see a lot of melting, like if you're standing outside, okay, that's where the cubby door is on this side. You go to the other side, you're like, that's where the cubby door is on that side, because you see a hot spot. The other one that leaks a lot is the floor joist gets missed a lot. So they'll have a floor on here, they got all their totes up here, and they got 3 inches of insulation and an 8-inch joist. Well, right here is coming your floor joist from inside, air just pouring out of here. So you usually got to pull up a floorboard or dense pack this to stop that air transfer. Then usually put some sort of spray foam or foam board on the back of these knee walls to stop the heat loss and air leakage. So,
Which way is easier for you to, regardless of what they want?
they're about a horse piece. I like doing hot roofs. A lot of people really worry about the ventilation. Like, well, I don't have ventilation. And I say, well, okay, you got 6 feet that has no ventilation. You already have 4 feet right now that has no ventilation. Usually with those slopes, we just try to dense pack them as tight as possible, because again, with ventilation, you either want a whole bunch or none at all. That's why you can use spray foam right to a roof, call it a hot roof. It's the only way you can technically insulate, especially new construction, without ventilating a roof, because you don't have any heat loss, you don't have any moisture drive, anything like that through a spray foam. Yeah.
How does that work then as far as the roof goes? 'Cause with a hot deck, I know sometimes like shingles
sir.
call
Shingle-
avoid the warranty.
Yeah, there's different shingle companies, and I don't know them all. There's some that might void that warranty. Have I seen any evidence that it hurts anything? No. They say that it raises that shingle temperature maybe a degree or two. It's almost nothing. It's a very acceptable way, obviously, of doing the insulating. But yeah, certain shingle companies, I think, may void their warranty if it's not a ventilated style roof. I don't know how many of those are. Probably something I should get smarter on, but usually a homeowner has no clue what kind of shingles they have anyways. But yeah, that's a valid point. But that's usually the easiest way to do it, and I think it's the most energy efficient for sure. Then it's a heated space. You can store anything you want in there. You don't got to worry about sealing up the doors, because every time somebody has one, they want to use it to put something in there. So usually we treat them as conditioned space, get them sealed up. There's still a lot more. When you insulate these floors, a lot of times they're only 2x6, maybe a 2x8, so you don't get a lot of insulation value there in the first place. And then you got to deal with trying to ventilate those things, and it's just, they get kind of cobbled and a little bit ugly. But we do them both ways a lot. If you show up and they already got 2 nice gable ends on it, vents, and it's got 2 roof vents on it and stuff, we're like, okay, it's done pretty well this way. Let's just finish it. That's fine. But if they got really nothing going for them, I would do the hot roof and seal up the gable ends. Pretty much covers all my pictures. What else you guys got for questions? Related,
Difference
non-related?
between open cell foam and closed cell foam, and where do you use them?
Open cell foam, don't use it.
Don't use it.
It's really good for sound.
Sound.
It does have, so open cell and closed cell will have about twice as much R value per inch. Closed cell foam will make its own vapor barrier at, they say, 1.5 inches, 2 inches,
Okay.
where open cell never does.
Cause it absorbs water.
Yeah, vapor can go right through it. I mean, it's basically a sponge. You know,
Gotcha.
I could take, we use spray foam, open cell when it's spec'd on some stuff. You can spray a garbage bag full, and you can take it, and I can make it into that big.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's used very little in our climate. They use a lot, you know, Florida, Texas, that kind of stuff, but not very seldom here. It's a special spec or sound. So
Gotcha.
when you spray, I mean, you spray like that much open cell on a wall cavity, it's gonna make like 6 inches of foam. I mean, it's just like that. So it's used to fill cavities and use sound insulation, but not very often for thermal. Really no need. So
It's good for playing mouse holes.
it will air seal. You know, when you
So,
spray
like-
foam, it will air seal stuff, but it just doesn't ever make a vapor
The
barrier.
can of great stuff is just open cell, you know, like.
It's kind of like
everybody
in
uses
between.
it.
It's kind of like in between. Like once you cut it, you know, when you spray it and it seals, it's kind of got that skin on it.
Yeah.
That makes it pretty hard for like moisture to move through it. So you cut it and then you can see the holes in it, so that pretty much makes it an open cell. It's kind of like in between, but
Gotcha.
yeah. We don't obviously look for it so much as a
Yeah, yeah.
vapor barrier, but air sealing.
Well, I'll just, Johnny Menard sells a bazillion cans of it.
Oh yeah, it works great. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah. Doors, windows, cracks. Absolutely. Yeah. What other issues you run into on inspections that might be able to help you with?
Is there anything special you should look for in like a tray ceiling?
Tray
As
ceiling?
far as
Not really. I mean,
insulation or anything?
as long as if it's a foot tall tray ceiling, usually we just heap those with insulation. So if you got enough insulation, especially like a cellulose, it'll kind of settle and pack tight where it'll insulate that wall cavity pretty good. Because usually there's nothing there to insulate unless you use a spray foam. Once you start getting 16, 18, 2 foot, then they shouldn't be getting heaped anymore. If they're a foot, you can insulate them well enough or they're not gonna show up, but they start getting taller than that, that insulation is gonna start to settle, and it's too loose where that wall's gonna get pretty cold, especially with fiberglass. I mean, that air will move right through it. Again, cellulose is such a better insulator than fiberglass, in my opinion. If you take a thermal camera and look at a ceiling, the fiberglass is gonna look very uneven, or way more uneven. With cellulose, it's gonna almost look exactly the same. So, everybody familiar with blower doors? I think I already asked that. That's a great way to identify problems. And if homeowners are having issues, like with all that focus on energy stuff, you do have to do a blower door to test, to qualify for those rebates, but we use blower doors a lot, especially like getting these. They're really good for like old farmhouses and a lot of like lake homes, cause they've been added onto 15 times, so it's like what got cut open and never sealed back up, where air's coming from there, going down here, through here, down here, and freezing this pipe. Like, we got an air seal 20 feet away, but it's freezing that pipe because it's just dropping like this. So, that's pretty common. We use it to find. They're a very good tool for that. So, yeah. What else you got?
What's the minimum code for insulation in an attic?
49.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
This might be a gray area, but with as much as fiberglass settles,
Fiberglass doesn't settle. Doesn't settle. It's not supposed to.
Okay.
Cellulose settles, depending on how much you put in,
Okay.
10 to 15%.
Mm.
Yeah, depth wise. Fiberglass stays pretty well put, but again, not
so do you compensate with that when you're blowing in?
cellulose.
Yeah.
So they give you, like on a attic card, they'll give you an installed thickness and a settled thickness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Alright.
yeah. So like an R50 will blow in 15 inches and it'll settle to 13 and a half or 13.
Sure.
You know.
So with fiberglass, can't you fluff that up if you wanted to? Not saying you, but as far
Once
as
that
putting
stuff
all.
compacts, it doesn't fluff back. It's like cotton candy.
Yeah.
Once you squish cotton candy, you're not gonna be able to fluff it back.
Yeah. Well, what I meant is like blowing it in, where it seems like it's higher than what it actually is. Does that make sense at all?
You mean just install it thicker and get more R value? Is that what you're saying?
Install it thicker and make it pretend like it's thicker.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Kind of fluff it as you're getting it in there to make
Yeah.
it look like it's deeper than it. What
Uh,
you put in.
Pretty tough. I mean, when you're blowing it in, I mean, You have different settings where, like, if you really mulch up fiberglass, it might be fluffier actually.
Yeah,
Um,
that's kinda what I'm.
There, look at that.
the fluffier it is, the worse it's gonna insulate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, if you have certain settings, you can make it the same depth, but not perform as well, yeah. You wanna process all the insulations just right, like even cellulose, if you under-process it, it'll be too dense, you won't break it up enough, and then it'll actually settle more. So there's a little science to it, it's not always perfect by no means, but, yeah, you wanna get it processed just right to get the effectiveness out of what it's rated for. Yeah. The denser, that's kind of a misconception too, like, when people are like, if you squish insulation, it loses R value. If you take a piece of batting and you compress batting that's this thick and make it that thick, yeah, it's gonna lose R value. But really, like, if you put a piece of fiberglass batting in a wall, it's gonna be R19 or R21. If you dense pack that same wall with blown fiberglass, you're gonna get R23, 24. And that's because you're stopping, basically they call it a convective loop. So you're stopping that temperature difference in airflow through the insulation. You're gaining efficiency by stopping air movement through the cavity. So that's why dense packing's so energy efficient in the same thickness cavity. We do it a lot. It's getting more and more popular.
Sure.
I'd say probably 35–40% of houses are 35% of houses are doing dense pack now. It's getting pretty popular. You gain a lot of efficiency. Makes a quieter house. All kinds of stuff.
Big time.
Yeah. So yeah. I wouldn't. If I were to build a house today, I don't think I would even spray foam my own house. I would probably go with a dense pack above grade. Do spray foam in the basement, but I like dense packing above grade for sure. Again, if you can get a house very tight, the air leakage is the number you really want, and then the R values. You're getting a lot more energy efficiency by the air tightness than you are the R values, obviously. So,
I built my little house last year, slab on grade, I dense packed the walls.
Yeah.
And I had them spray foam the top plates.
Yep.
And I built the boxes, I spray foamed all them,
Yep.
and then cellulose.
Yep.
That thing is I have a wood fireplace and in-floor heat.
Yeah.
It holds heat like for 2-3 days.
Yeah, people
It
think you
takes like
gotta-
4 sticks of
Yeah.
wood.
People
It's
think
80
you gotta go
degrees.
completely overboard, like spray
No.
foam the wall, spray foam the attic. If
No.
you just do it right with
Seal
pretty
it.
conventional
Seal
stuff,
in the air, yep.
you'll never see the payback for a lot of it.
It's mind blowing.
People are like, insulate my house this way. I'm like, that's gonna be $70,000. Like, that's what I want. I'm like, I could do the
Yeah.
same. I could do a pretty good job for 20.
Yeah.
You know, you're never gonna see that 50 grand back, no matter how efficient that house is.
Well, you get the 98% furnace and
Yeah.
it's like you have fiberglass batter on your windows.
Yeah,
and
there's a point of
it's
diminishing
like
return.
you're not gonna gain
For
anything
sure,
because
yeah. Do it right, pretty conventionally, maybe a little bit upgrade here and there, but you don't gotta go crazy.
I don't even go through a tank of LP in a year, and that's with water heater, boiler,
Yeah.
dryer. And they're like, holy shit, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
We've been doing it wrong all the
Yeah,
Right.
like code, I don't even know what the code number is, but it's some 3.5 air exchange or something, it's terrible. We can insulate a house, very basic, just to meet code, and we should be at 1.5 air exchanges, which is how they kind of rate how leaky a house is, and that's not even trying.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's Bible.
yeah.
What's the worst thing that you've seen in an attic where you're like, get me out of here? Animals or?
Bats, a lot of bats, probably bats.
Yeah.
It's just, that's nasty. I've been in them, I opened up one right up by the Cobbin Bridge in Cornell, and there was, I don't know, hundreds. They were full of bat shit. And when you open that door, you're like, holy smokes, I just shut that thing. Yeah, you couldn't even breathe. Yeah, it's bad, it's real bad. They're like, yeah, you hear them and see them come out every night. Like, well, maybe we
No
should've done
shit.
something before now.
Got a
You know,
bat
like
cage
you knew
in
they
there.
were there. Now it's a real problem.
Put
Put
a
the house down. 'Cause
shit
that smell-
scraper in there.
Yeah.
like
It
in
don't
the
go away.
barns.
Don't go away. Yeah, you can tell pretty much right away when you open something up. You're like,
Yeah.
they're here. They're here.
In
We're
the summertime, if it's bad enough, you can smell it.
Oh yeah, ammonia-ish smell. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nasty.
Yeah, this fall, I had a customer like, yeah, we're here, and we smell upstairs. I was thinking right away as old, there's probably bad shit up there. There was, just loads of it.
Yeah. I
Couldn't
don't know
smell
if
it on that day because it was like cold.
Yeah.
So it was, you know.
Go through kind of stages, like the last year and a half's been flying squirrels in attics. That must be up on the population of flying squirrels, cause I hadn't seen one in 15 years. In the last 2 years, like, I got flying squirrels in my attics, like, again? I don't know.
At
why.
least they're cute.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, until you're not expecting them. Yeah, right
They
there.
can live anywhere but in the attic.
Yeah.
Then go.
I mean, go run into squirrels, chipmunks, snakes.
Oh,
I don't know,
yeah.
snakes.
Snakes.
Can't be snakes.
Snakes and crawl spaces.
Yeah.
Not as often as you think, but enough.
Raccoons do a number on attics, so see if we do those.
Her vacuum will suck up a live squirrel just like that. No problem. No problem.
It'll be fun.
Got a line.
Insulation, exterminator, all at once.
Yeah, we got you covered. Yeah, if anybody ever runs into anything, you guys got my card, so.
Mhm,
If you got a question, just call me, know where to find me, and give you my 2 cents on anything. If you got a picture or something, I can say what might be going on. I've been in 15,000 more attics than I ever dreamed of being.
You ever think you'd be an attic guy, an insulation guy?
No, funny story is I went to school at the tech college in 2000, started in 2005 for the wood tech program for building houses, residential. And our owner, Pat Smith, so the tech kids had to help set up for that show. We help all the contractors set up. And Pat at the time was like, he just started, he'd been in business like a year and a half. He says, you looking for a job? When you get out, you call me. And I was like, yeah, you got it. And I walked away thinking, I'm never gonna insulate it. I mean, 8 months later, I'm an insulator, and I've been there ever since, so I think joke was on me, you know, but, yeah, that was, I worked in the cities and carpentry after college for 1 year, and then, yeah, that was 2007, and she was starting